Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling one of philosophy's oldest and, let's be honest, toughest questions. And we're ripping a page straight out of Plato's masterpiece, The Republic. It's a question that really gets to the heart of what it even means to be a good person.
So let's just start with a modern spin on it. Imagine you had a superpower, some ability that meant you would face zero, and I mean zero, consequences for anything you did. Nobody would ever find out. Would you still choose to do the right thing? Or would you just do whatever you wanted? That's the core of the puzzle we're digging into today.
All right, so the scene is ancient Athens. Socrates thinks he's neatly wrapped up a discussion on justice, but his friend Glaucon isn't buying it. Plato tells us Glaucon is always the most pugnacious of men, so you know he's looking for a philosophical fight. He doesn't want a simple answer. He wants to know, deep down, is justice something we want for its own sake, or just for the good reputation it gets us?
To make things super clear, Glaucon lays out this framework. He says everything we call good fits into one of three boxes. First, you've got stuff we like just because it's fun, like pure joy. Second, stuff we want for its own sake and for what it gets us. Think good health or knowledge. And third, things that are kind of a drag, like yucky medicine or a tough job, but we do them for the reward at the end. And the million-dollar question he lobs at Socrates is, so where does justice fit? Socrates, of course, shoots for the stars. He puts justice in that top-tier category, good in itself and good for its results. But Glaucon hits the brakes hard. He says, hold on, Socrates. If most people were really being honest, they'd stick it in that bottom category. They see being just as a total chore, something we only put up with because we're scared of getting punished, and we want everyone to think we're a good person. And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. Glaucon challenges Socrates to strip justice down completely. Forget about rewards in the afterlife, forget about social status, forget about any of the perks. He wants Socrates to prove that justice, all by itself, as a quality inside your soul, is worth having. That it makes your life better even if no one knows you have.
So, to make sure Socrates brings his A game, Glaucon decides to play devil's advocate. He says, all right, I'm going to make the strongest, most compelling case I can for why being unjust is actually way, way better than being just. And you have to beat it.
Glaucon basically rewrites the origin story of justice. He argues that by our nature, doing wrong to others is pretty good for us, and having wrong done to us is pretty bad. But he says the pain of suffering injustice is so much worse than the fun of doing it that we weaker folks all got together and made a deal. We created laws and called this whole system justice. So in his view, justice isn't some noble ideal, it's a compromise. It's a social contract created by the weak to protect themselves from the strong.
Now, to really drive the point home, Glaucon asks us to imagine two lives, taken to the absolute extreme. On one side, you have the perfectly just man. He only cares about being good, not looking good, but the world sees him as the most evil person alive. He's stripped of everything, tortured, and ultimately killed, all while being completely innocent. On the other side, the perfectly unjust man. This guy is a genius at deception. Everyone thinks he's a saint, a pillar of the community, while behind the scenes, he's doing whatever it takes to get ahead. He's rich, powerful, respected, and happy. So Glaucon asks, which one is happier? And the answer seems obvious, doesn't it? It's a devastating blow against justice.
To really hammer this home, Glaucon tells a story. And it's a thought experiment so famous, so powerful, that its influence is echoed for centuries. You might even hear a little bit of Tolkien's One Ring in this. This is the story of the Ring of Gyges.
So it all starts with this ordinary shepherd, a guy named Gyges, who's just out tending his flock.
All of a sudden, there's a huge storm, and an earthquake literally cracks the ground open right in front of him. Being curious, he decides to go down and have a look.
Down in the chasm, he finds something incredible, a hollow bronze horse. He peeks inside and sees a corpse wearing nothing except for a single gold ring on its finger. He takes the ring and climbs back out, not really thinking much of it.
A little later, he's at a meeting with the other shepherds, and he's just kind of fidgeting with this new ring on his finger. He accidentally turns the setting inward toward his palm, and poof! The guys around him start talking about him as if he's not even there. He turns the ring back, and he reappears. He just discovered the ultimate superpower, invisibility. So what does Gyges do with this newfound power? Exactly what Glaucon predicted. He immediately uses it to get into the royal court, seduce the queen, conspire with her to murder the king, and then takes over the whole kingdom himself. Glaucon's point here is just brutal. He argues that if you gave one ring to a just man and another to an unjust man, their behavior would end up being exactly the same. No one is good by choice, but only because they're forced to be. The temptation to be a god among men would be too strong for anyone to resist.
And with that, Glaucon rests his case. He's dropped the mic. The argument against justice seems airtight, logical, and really persuasive. So how on earth is Socrates supposed to respond to this? Well, backed into a corner, he admits how hard this is, and he suggests a completely new way to tackle the problem.
And you know, Socrates is actually humbled by this. He admits that Glaucon's argument has him stumped, that he feels unequal to the task. But, he says, it would be a crime to just stand by and listen to justice get trashed like this without even trying to defend it. So, he agrees to give it his best shot.
So here's his move. It's brilliant. He uses this great analogy. He says, imagine you're trying to read tiny little letters from far away. It's nearly impossible, right? But what if someone told you, hey, those same letters are written over there, but in huge, giant print on a wall? You would obviously go read the big letters first, then come back to the small ones. He says justice is exactly like that. Trying to see it clearly in one single person's soul is like trying to read those tiny letters. It's too hard. But a city, a state, that's bigger, justice will be written there in large letters, easy for everyone to see.
And that is the masterful pivot that sets up the rest of the Republic. Socrates proposes that they stop squinting at the tiny letters of the individual soul. Instead, he says, let's build a city. Let's design a perfectly just city right here in our conversation, from the ground up. And in doing so, they'll be able to see where justice and injustice truly come from. And with that one move, Socrates transforms a deeply personal ethical question into a sweeping political one. It sets the stage for this massive philosophical journey, and it leaves us with a really provocative thought. Can we ever truly understand what it means for one of us to be a good person without first trying to figure out what it would take to build a good world? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.